All right, Xavier, let's discuss your essay. I think overall you've made some very solid improvements in terms of your argumentative writing. I think especially I'm seeing a good maturity in terms of your argumentative capabilities and a deepening of both your close reading and your top level argumentation. I know that you've been working really hard in terms of trying to master these core attributes, Xavier, and I think overall there's a lot of things to be affirmed here. Let's just jump on in. First, don't forget about putting your header in the upper right-hand corner, kind of, double click in there, going to the right, putting your name, page number, so on and so forth. Let's keep going down. I think overall your thesis is superb. I like it a lot. Only thing that there should not be an apostrophe there, right? It's warping of human nature as opposed to it is warping of human nature. But overall, good thesis. I think body paragraph 1 for the most part works. One thing I noticed was in the first, you sometimes have convoluted logic where it's not quite clear how you are jumping to these conclusions. And so, for instance, I think you start off by doing really good analysis of the brick maker, but the irony is that there wasn't a fragment of brick anywhere. That is the ironic disconnect there. But instead, the way you try to generate the irony is by saying that the brick maker causes instability by starting a fire. But he's not starting like a forest fire. He's just lighting a candle in his room. So it's definitely a logical leap to say that he has created instability by having a candle in his room. The candle's point is about showing that he has influence and power when he shouldn't have influence and power, especially because he's not doing anything productive. So you have the right kind of logic. It's just the evidence that you use to prove that point doesn't really make much sense, especially when the original quotation you had made a lot of sense. Also, in this first commentary chunk, you don't actually explain what is ironic. You just kind of leave it up to the reader to interpret or to decide what is ironic about this first passage. I think in the second commentary chunk, you do a much better job of being explicit about what is ironic about what's going on here. Where do you say it? I think you say it, hold on, I'm trying to find it. There's no real basis through both. The dual use of irony creates a connection between irony. I forget where it is. Anyway, oh yeah, here it is. Marlowe's sarcastic praise creates the irony used to critique society. Like, that is a line that explains very well how this quotation that you had described above actually has irony within it. So don't forget about that first step of explaining how that literary device is actually being used or how you can identify it in the quotation itself. Once we go to body paragraph 2, I think overall body paragraph 2 does an excellent job of proving your point. Watch out for those types of typos. So no major comments here. Body paragraph 3 is where I have some issues. And so let's jump into it. I think you do a good job of dramatizing this question of Kurtz. I think here is the place where I get a little bit confused. So you're ultimately going to say that that Marlowe supports the pretenses over the inner darkness. Now let's see the evidence that you use to prove this point, all right? Number 1 is about Marlowe being described as a meditating Buddha. Now notice this has nothing to do with the unique narration style, right? Narrating style would be about the levels or the layers of narrators within this text. Here, this is just a description, right? This is some sort of imagery to describe Marlowe. And all right, I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, Buddha is a religious figure. I mean, yes, he is intelligent, but okay, fine. Let's say I grant you this argument. Your claim here is basically based on Marlowe return to society, thus he sides with pretenses, which isn't necessarily, I mean, whatever. It's an okay defense, but it's not a superb or super robust one. The second one is more confusing. You start talking about the passage of time being confusing, and I'll concede this point that it's confusing, but you never provide a robust explanation of why that shows why he, on a value judgment level, affirms social pretenses over the darkness of the jungle. There's just no explanation of how the passage of time is relevant to that question. And so I think this is a big issue, Xavier. I don't think the narration style here is really being described as linking to your ultimate thesis. And moreover, I don't get much of a robust explanation besides the simple fact that he goes back to civilization and he's described as being a Buddha figure, thus being smart, of why he ultimately affirms it. I think the issue with the Buddha one in my mind is that's how somebody else is seeing Marlowe. That doesn't speak to anything in terms of why Marlowe went back to civilization. Just because another person sees him as being a prophetic figure doesn't mean that his decision to return to civilization was based off an intelligent, irrational rationale, if that makes sense. And so I think that's a logical issue. The scene that you really need to focus on is the final scene with Kurtz's intended. I am shocked that that scene is not discussed in this essay if you're going to ultimately argue that Marlowe is affirming the societal pretenses, because that is the moment where he undermines the honesty about humanity's savagery that Kurtz had affirmed within the jungle. And so I think that is a big missed opportunity, Xavier, and I'm a little bit confused by the underlying logic that's going on here in this final paragraph, because I think you have an excellent setup for your argument in body paragraph 1 and 2, and even the beginning of body paragraph 3, but I don't think you quite land the jump in terms of proving why Marlowe ultimately affirms societal pretenses, right? If I were to ask you to just explain to me based on everything you have presented here, why is it better to affirm societal pretenses than the honest fact of humanity's savagery, I don't think this provides a clearly robust explanation of why. So hopefully that makes sense, Xavier. Again, I think you've made really good strides in the right direction, but you got to work. We want to push you to really make sure that the ultimate conclusion to your argument is just as robust as the setup.